1.7 million people left in the first 2 weeks of this war. Certainly, our immigration lawyer before the break did not seem very optimistic, a system that doesn't work even now. Some of your reactions to this. Bren says, where are they all going to live? There are no houses and hotels are fully booked with economic migrants. Bren, I've seen that on my email over the weekend from lots of people, I have to say. Brett says, our country is full. Well, Brett, actually, I think one of the arguments that was made there that was quite powerful by Amnesty was that those that come that have got family in the UK will get taken in by those families, and that certainly would be a big help and a big relief. Silas says, can schools cope? Can GPs cope? Or are they still in hiding? Well, I think some GPs are back at work. Can we really handle any more? Where will they all live? People that lived here their whole lives and are refused housing. Well, I have to say, Silas, I think the housing issue is very real. And when we took Farage at large up to Sunderland, one of the sources of real anger was that so many people that were coming across the English Channel were being housed in Sunderland and areas like that in the northeast, whereas the council housing lists were getting longer and longer. That had led to a lot of real upset and anger. But I do think when it comes to people genuinely fleeing a war zone, women and children fleeing a war zone, I think we'll find ourselves as open-hearted as we can be. But you're right, there are huge practical problems. Arico says many are coming without visas, in fact without any documentation every single day through the Channel. Yep, this is still the issue. The issue of what's happening in the Channel infuriates people. It certainly does me. And one viewer says, if this government's planning an action on Afghanistan is anything to go by, no. Didn't they just have one person doing overtime during the weekend at that crisis? Well, yes, I think that's right, and our senior civil servant in that department, of course, was away on an extended holiday. Now, energy. Those that watch this programme regularly will know that I've become increasingly vexed about the government's energy strategy. You see, we import 50% of the natural gas that we need, and we need it, particularly when the wind turbines don't blow. In fact, the more wind turbines we build, the more gas ultimately we need. There's no need to import that gas. There's lots of gas in this country. And the same goes for coal, and increasingly the same goes for oil, as British and Scottish governments just don't give Shell, BP, any of these companies up to 9% of our electricity from that lovely man, President Macron. We've made ourselves wholly dependent in energy terms on other countries, albeit we're far less dependent on Mr. Putin, who only sells us about 4% of the natural gas that we buy, as opposed to Germany, who of course would literally be closed down overnight because of the disastrous policies of Angela Merkel. This week, the two drill holes, the two wells that a firm called Codrella sunk up in the northwest of England, those wells designed to get natural gas, they have to be filled in with concrete this week. Can you imagine anything more ludicrous at this moment in time? And as a result of that, 40 Conservative members of Parliament and peers between them have written to the Prime Minister saying this would be an act of folly. Others, of course, who follow me will know that I have joined, I'm helping to run a campaign saying vote for power, not for poverty. And what I'm saying is, let's become self-sufficient in energy. What I'm saying is, let's get rid of the 5% VAT on our bills. That was an explicit promise in the referendum. And what I'm also saying is, stop loading up people's electricity bills. Up to 20% of that bill is green subsidies. All of this has happened with no debate whatsoever. And if these things aren't done, it's a subject so vast, we deserve to have a referendum on it. So I feel very strongly about this, and that's not wanting to turn my back on green energy, on renewable energy, on low carbon energy, and I'd love to see things like hydrogen cells become a huge success. But the fact is, we are going to need considerable amounts of fossil fuels for many, many years to come, we might just as well produce them ourselves and not be dependent on anybody else in the world. And I think one of the results that will come from what's happening in Ukraine, and kind of Trump really was in the vanguard of this when he talked about America first. I think countries will start to put their own interests first. And if you finish up with a genuine shortage, that could mean the lights going out in Britain. That to me would be madness. Well, joining me is Bob Ward from the Grantham Research Institute on Climate Change and the Environment at the London School of Economics. Bob, good evening. Welcome again back to the programme.
Good evening.
I know you've heard what I've just said. Given that we will be using gas and we will be using some coal in steel production and things like that, and given that the vast majority of our cars and vans run on petrol and diesel, wouldn't it make more sense in a dangerous world and actually reduce global CO2 emissions if we became self-sufficient in these energies?
Well, let's, for the moment, pretend that air pollution and climate change don't exist and just look at the case for whether we could become self-sufficient on fossil fuels. If you look at the analyses, it's simply not true that we can become self-sufficient on fossil fuels. The North Sea is a mature basin. The production of oil and gas is going down. Even though the official government policy is maximizing economic recovery, so we're pumping as much as we can at the moment. Some want us to frack to get shale gas and say it was a terrible mistake to have introduced the moratorium in 2019. Well, if we hadn't had the moratorium and we went ahead and production went along the lines of the most optimistic scenarios by the industry, at the moment, this year, we would produce perhaps 1.6 billion cubic meters of natural gas from shale gas. Now, that sounds like a lot, but that's less than 2.5% of our annual consumption. So it really wouldn't make much difference to our security or indeed to energy bills. So if we can frack, if we can get shale gas out of the ground safely, so that, and with community support, I'd be in favour of it because it has a lower carbon footprint than shipping it in from the United States and Qatar. But at the moment, the problem with fracking here is that the places where they've tried it, it's caused small amounts of earth tremors, and there's no guarantee that they couldn't cause bigger tremors, and people just don't want to take that risk at the moment.
I'm not sure that's true. I mean, you're right, it was experimental and there was a minor tremor, and that was because the correct procedures weren't followed. But Bob, I mean, the point is this. Actually, when it comes to the North Sea, you know, when oil's at $50 a barrel, the North Sea is pretty marginal. When oil is, well, it's been up to 140 today, but when oil is over $100 a barrel, a lot more of the North Sea is there. But look, I'm pleased that you do at least accept the principle that if we could do these things safely in this country, that actually that'll be the right thing to do. But for manufacturing too, we've outsourced steel production, heavy engineering, and we say to ourselves that actually, that's good. We've produced less CO2, but actually what happens is the goods get produced in other countries under lower standards and then get shipped back to us. And here's my point to you. You know, the Vote Power Not Poverty campaign, I've had left-wing critics saying I don't care about climate change. Isn't the truth of it that if we could be self-sufficient in oil, manufacture more of our own products, that actually that would reduce global CO2 output?
Well, remember that the reason why manufacturing's gone to other countries is because it's lower labor costs. It hasn't gone to India and China because of energy costs. It's gone because it's cheaper workers there. So that's not really an issue here. And to be honest, Nigel, if you really want to get away from the volatility of fossil fuel prices, because we know this happens periodically, we are never going to be self-sufficient in fossil fuels. There just isn't enough fossil fuels. The only realistic way we will protect ourselves is by investing much more in energy efficiency. At the moment, people are wasting a lot of money because their houses are not properly insulated. So we should be investing much more so that people are not wasting money with gas that they don't really get the benefit of. And we should be moving more towards domestic clean energy. Frankly, if we had carried on building more onshore wind self-sufficient, even if you didn't believe in the damage it's causing by climate change and air pollution.
Bob Ward, thank you. Well, folks, I disagree with most of that, but on this show, you always get both shades of opinion. We are going to need gas and oil and coal for a long time to come. Yes, we want good, clean technologies too, but that's just realistic. Well, in a moment, joining me to discuss all of this is Dale Vince OBE, somebody who's been a pioneer in renewable energies.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the question.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Coming up on Dan Wootton Tonight with me, Mark Dolan. We'll get the latest on all medical matters, including on COVID, with the positive professor himself, Dr. Carol Sikora. Are we finally at the tail end of this pandemic? GB News' very own voice of reason, historian and presenter Neil Oliver joins us with the issues that have caught his eye. We'll bring you all the latest from Ukraine. Plus, in Uncancelled, we'll catch up with Welsh entrepreneur and anti-lockdown campaigner Richard Taylor. And I'll bring you a look at the newspaper first editions. Reacting to the big stories of the day will be my superstar panel, including the iPaper's Benjamin Butterworth, columnist at the Daily Express Carol Malone, and political commentator Esther Kraku. That's Dan Wootton Tonight with me, Mark Dolan, Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. on GB News.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Good evening. Clear skies for many of us overnight, which will allow it to turn pretty chilly for tomorrow morning. A breezy day with plenty of sunshine again across eastern areas. Further west, however, we'll see increasing cloud and some showers from these weather fronts that are slowly edging towards the UK. High pressure, though, is still in charge at the moment, and that's going to bring most of us a dry night. There are some big areas of cloud around, but that cloud tending to drift northwards and break up. So As I said at the start, many of us will have clear spells, and that will allow temperatures to tumble. Many towns and cities, certainly in the far east and the far west, will stay above freezing, but down the spine of the country we will see a frost, especially in rural areas. On to Tuesday's details. Quite a few of us a sparkling start with some sunshine. A brisk wind though, and you'll notice that despite the sunshine, it will feel pretty chilly. Cloud increasing further west as those weather fronts just start to nibble in, bringing some showers to Devon, Cornwall, Pembrokeshire, and eventually we'll see cloud and rain spreading across Northern Ireland during the afternoon too. Slowly turning milder, double figures more widely, but not feeling all that mild with the wind, even in the sunnier skies further east, only 7, 8 or 9 Celsius. We'll see a bit more rain trickling across Scotland during the evening before that tends to fizzle out. And then another weather front, another line of rain will edge in as we head into Wednesday, bringing potentially quite a wet day for Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. Late in the day, we could see some of that rain crop up across West Wales, southwest England, but at the moment, Wednesday looks largely dry for England, Wales and eastern Scotland, and bright as well with some hazy sunshine. It will again be quite windy, but the wind's always coming up from the south, bringing mild air. So again, temperatures widening to double figures. Colder though, where that weather front is sitting around across Scotland and Northern Ireland. So we'll see some more patchy rain, particularly in the west on Friday, and temperatures just ticking up, especially in the south.
It's Talking Pints. I've got a catalan. I've got to apologise. I'm really sorry, Dale Vince, that I'm not with you in the studio. It's down the line, but welcome to Talking Pints.
Thank you.
Now, Dale, you are something of an eco-warrior, and you run Ecotricity. You claim that it's Britain's greenest energy provider, and I know that you're somebody that started very, very small with all of this. And by the way, you know, I am not against, of course I'm not against, renewable energies in any way, shape or form. It's the subsidies that give me the headache. But just begin, because I read about Glastonbury and mobile phones operating off a small windmill. Just tell me, what was the genesis of you becoming a green energy provider?
It probably was the 10 years I lived on the road. I lived in a bunch of different trucks and buses and things, and I made the stuff I lived in. I made the power that ran my life and stuff using a small windmill. And I did go to Glastonbury. I built a tower out of an old electricity pylon, got some old train batteries from a scrapyard at the bottom, rented some mobile phones and sold a phone service called Wind Phones. This is all in the late 80s, early 90s. And I was parked up on a hill outside Stroud where I live now, and it was windy, and I saw the first wind farm built in Cornwall. And I thought I could spend another 10 years living a low-impact lifestyle myself, or I could drop back in and try and make a bigger difference and build a big windmill on the hill I was parked up on. So I just set about doing that in the early 90s.
Yeah, I mean, you've been doing this a hell of a long time. Now, you talk about those early wind farms in Cornwall, and I remember at some point in the 90s driving down the A39 past Delabole. I think Delabole was the first or the second wind farm in Cornwall. And I remember thinking, first time I saw it, goodness me, that is ugly. And now I see these monstrosities off the Essex coast, off the North Kent coast. Boris wants to build more of them. I mean, they really are the most unsightly things ever, aren't they?
I think you're in a minority view there, Nigel. Most people think that wind turbines are graceful, beautiful structures, and they appreciate the work that they do, you know. They make energy out of the wind, you know, out of nothing. And really important thing with renewable energy, I heard your previous guy, Bob, speaking about fossil fuels, and I understand what you're saying about net zero. Important thing about renewable energy is it will never run out. And we can't power ourselves completely by fossil fuels because we don't have enough. But even if we could, fossil fuels in the North Sea and fracking, if it ever got going again, will all run out by 2030. That's just 8 years from now. We've got to have an answer that endures longer than 8 years from now. That's renewable energy.
Yeah, I have to say, all the scare stories about energy resources running out have always proved to be wrong, as we keep finding more and more energy. Look, my argument on this is that the more we rely on wind energy, the more we need gas as a backup, because as you and I both know, we get periods of time when the wind just doesn't blow. So I'm not fighting you over this. I'm not arguing that wind doesn't have a role to play. But isn't the point about this, Dale, and this is what upsets people, we've had a situation here where, and you know this as well as I do, rich landowners being paid, in some cases, thousands of pounds every week just to have wind turbines on their land, and the bill for that being picked up by ordinary people. Isn't there something really immoral about that, and about the fact no one's ever been told the truth?
Well, I think the rent that landowners have for hosting windmills is not out of proportion to the rent they have for hosting mobile phone towers. If you want to look at who's benefited most from rent for wind, take a look at the royal family through the Crown Estates. I mean, I think it runs into the billions, the rent being paid to use the seabed to host offshore windmills. But look, I think this kind of economic envy type argument is a distraction from what's really happening. Pre this crisis, our country spend £50 billion a year bringing fossil fuels here just to burn them. That's £1 billion a week. If we spent that 50 billion building renewable energy infrastructure, we could have 100% of our electricity made here in Britain and create a vast new industry of long-term sustainable jobs and make an enormous difference to our economy, because that money leaves our economy every year and it weakens us when it does that. We could change all of that. I'm with you on the energy independence front. The thing is, we can't do it with fossil fuels, but we can do it with renewable energy.
Well, I don't agree with that. I think we've got vast reserves. I mean, certainly gas. I mean, some estimates are we've got £1 trillion worth of gas under our feet in this country. Others think it could be as much as 2. But that perhaps is by the by. But the point I want to get back to, Dale, is it's ordinary folk on their bills that have picked up the tab for this. And this is my question to you, can the renewable sector work without taxpayer subsidy?
Not only can it, but it does. So offshore wind is cheaper than anything else we can build right now, and it has something called a contract for difference, and it's generating under the market price. It's paying the government right now for generation. Solar, which hasn't been banned onshore in our country, onshore wind has been banned, as Bob said. Solar is being built now without any form of government support whatsoever. We're building 2 solar farms right now ourselves. So, I mean, the answer is yes, Nigel. Renewable energy doesn't need a subsidy, but if you look at fossil fuels, we're putting billions into the North Sea to subsidize fossil fuels.
Well, I mean, as I say, at some point in time, there is no doubt that we're going to find ways, and it could be hydrogen cells, I don't know what it is. At some point, we're going to find ways that we'll use less in terms of fossil fuels. But for the moment, we can't survive without them. But I just wonder, I mean, because it seems to me that the greenest form of energy, the lowest carbon form of energy, that is at the same time the most reliable form of energy, and that is there 24/7, 365 days a year, is nuclear energy. And I just wonder, given that we've got these small nuclear reactors in the back of our submarines, that there's talk in North America, Canada, and in the United Kingdom, there is talk that, we can make nuclear power stations a fraction of the size of those 1960s monstrosity. I just wonder, do you see nuclear as being part of the mix going on from here?
Well, I think nuclear is part of the mix right now, and we should max it out. We should run it as long as it's safe to run it. But we shouldn't plan to build any more, because they take 10 years to plan and they take 10 years to build, and then they take another 10 years before they even break even on a carbon budget basis. And it's the most expensive electricity that's ever been generated, and it's not going down in price. It's just not getting any better. And of course, we leave a toxic legacy for thousands of years, and we don't know how to contain it. And we're spending 120 billion a year right now just containing what we've already created. So no, nuclear is not a part of our future other than what's currently running, and we should run it until it can't be run safely anymore.
So how do we, getting back to this point about, I mentioned nuclear because, and I understand all the problems around it, but I mentioned it because it is utterly reliable in the sense that it's there all the time. What do we use as backup for wind, for solar? I mean, gas, it seems, is the best and easiest option, is it? I mean, what other solutions do you think there are to that problem of intermittency?
Yeah, I mean, it's an important issue to tackle, and what we've got for that is a concept called the smart grid. So right now and historically, we've had something I like to think of as dumb demand. You know, we all just flick a switch at the same time. There's no science in that. And that causes enormous peaks on the grid at certain times of the day, and then we have enormous troughs at other times of the day. One of the problems of nuclear power is it has to run base load. It can't meet the peaks or the troughs. It just has to run like this. So it's not actually as perfect as it sounds. Our current grid switches generators in to hit the peaks and then turns them off to hit the troughs. What we need to do is control demand as well, and that's starting to happen in real time. We can control demand. There are certain loads that can be turned off for a few minutes or for half an hour. We've got grid-scale battery storage, which is coming on stream now in big amounts. There are other forms of storage as well, using gravity, for example. There are tidal lagoons that we could build. The tide is predictable 100 years in advance, and we can store vast quantities of water in these lagoons and release it like a big battery when we need the power. There are many ways we can do this. We're 40% green electricity on the grid today without a problem. We can get on a good in 10 years.
Well, on a good day, yes, but on a bad day, we get a big anticyclone, sits over the British Isles, and we do have a bit of a problem. Look, I don't doubt, with what you've done, you've innovated, and this is an evolving industry. And I'm asking tough questions about it because I just feel we've not really had a proper debate about the whole thing. But tell us a bit more about your company and how it operates, how many staff you've got, and have you made your fortune yet?
Yeah, so look, we started in 1995. We were the world's first green energy company. We made this available for the first time anywhere. We pioneered big wind and big solar in Britain. We brought green gas to Britain. We haven't even talked about that. And that's a super opportunity for us. We're working on geothermal, the idea of tidal lagoons. And you're quite right about the wind. Sometimes the wind doesn't blow. That's a fact. But the sun shines, the tides come and go. Geothermal is like nuclear. It's 24/7, 365 days of the year, and it's just starting to be exploited in Cornwall. So the answer to 100% renewable energy on the grid is to have a mix of technologies that are working at different times of the year and the day and under different weather conditions with grid storage. But to come back to your question, we're about 800 people. I think our turnover is about 300 million quid this year or something like that. We build about 100 megawatts of generation. We supply about 200,000 homes. And we're here to make a difference. We're here to change how energy is made and used in Britain. And we think we've done a fair job of that so far. But there's further to go. And this energy crisis that began before the war in Ukraine, it's just been exacerbated by that. That shows us there's another real economic imperative to being energy independent in our country.
No, there really is. But you are also a private company there to make profit. And you didn't answer my second part of the question. Have you made your fortune yet?
No, I laughed at that. I answered that first. Look, we are actually a mission-led company. We're not here to make money for the sake of making money. We're here to make money to put back into our mission to change the way energy is made. And that's the way we roll. I like to express it in the form of a question you may have heard before. Do you live to eat or do you eat to live? As a company, we eat to live, but most companies live to eat. Therefore, by which I mean they exist to make profit for the sake of making profit. We don't do that. We're a mission-driven company that makes money to put it back into our mission.
Dale Vince, you've been recognised with an OBE. You have a passion for what you do, which I commend you for. And look, I'm not your enemy, but I just want us to have a big, honest, open debate about energy, about our future. And I thank you. And I regret not being in a London studio with you, but I thank you for coming on Talking Pints. That was Dale
Thank you.
Vince.
Listen, I appreciate being here. Thanks for the beer and good luck whatever you're doing.
Thank you. Well, we've certainly had a lot of different opinions expressed today about energy, and I have given the green energy lobby, every chance to put their point of view. And what they do agree on is the idea, because really, it's crazy, isn't it? How can you fight the idea of being energy self-sufficient? And I want the UK to be a net exporter of energy, not, as we are now, a massive net importer. Really interesting. Boris Johnson this morning, responding to all of this, said that we have to increase natural gas production to make ourselves in the West less dependent on President Putin. Yes, he's urged America, Canada and the Gulf to produce more gas, just not us. He did later on in the day say that all options were on the table. And I think actually Johnson's energy policy is coming under some quite heavy pressure. And if I can add to that, well, you can bet your life I will do so. Now, we've got time for a few Barrage the Farages, which for once have been printed out for me, but I haven't